Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This happened in the fall of 2020 during the COVID pandemic. My friend, who for the story you'll call Jay, and I were on our way from New York to Michigan. We were going to do a couple of flooring jobs and also scout some potential properties to renovate and flip. We were using his work truck for the trip, which was a Ford F-150. We decided to leave in the evening and make the drive all night to get to our destination. Some of our trip was on a 2-lane highway that passed through the mountains of Pennsylvania. The highway was far from safe, with elevated mountain terrain, constant turns, and snaking pathways. I was driving while Jay was trying to get some sleep in the passenger seat. At one point, I stopped at a gas station to refuel and ran into the store to grab some drinks and snacks for the road. It was a little past midnight. I noticed one other car refueling a few pumps away from us, a red or burgundy SUV. I paid it no mind as I ran back to the truck. Fast forward to 30 minutes later. I was cruising in the left lane, going about 90 miles per hour, when I noticed headlights coming up behind us. From what I could tell, it appeared to be the same red SUV from the gas station. At first, I didn't really think anything about it, but soon enough it dawned on me that this guy had been following us ever since the gas station. I decided to do a quick test to see if I was being tailed. Since I had been going 90 consistently, I slowed down to 70 and waited to see if the SUV would pass us. Instead, the car slowed down to match our pace. Now I was on alert. I woke Jay and told him about the situation. Jay was an ex-Army Ranger and was a lot more vigilant than me. He was also crazier. Immediately he said, "Hey, that's the car from the gas station. I noticed that guy was looking at you extra hard when you passed him by earlier." Jay, being who he was, wanted me to do a few more tests to figure out what was going on. He told me to switch lanes erratically, and so I did. The red SUV did as well. Jay advised me to pull over to the shoulder of the highway and come to a complete stop. I did, and once again, the psycho who was following us slowed down and parked right behind us. Jay was fairly confident that this man must have had a firearm on him because of how bold he was to pull up right behind us on the side of the highway. I quickly took stock of what we had in the truck that we could use as weapons. We had a hatchet and a machete. Each of us had a folding knife as well, but we had no firearms. Jay instructed me to pull out quickly and gun it back up to 90 miles per hour. I pulled off the shoulder and stayed in the right lane as I pressed hard on the gas. The SUV stayed right behind us. Jay wanted me to brake check the guy so he would crash into us, then we could charge the SUV with our machete and hatchet and hope for the best. That was a bit too hardcore for me. I told Jay we were not going to do that. At this point, the man behind us wasn't an active threat yet. If he tried to ram our truck or shoot at us, that would be a different story. I asked Jay if he could think of any other way we could get away from this guy. Jay looked around the truck and found a high-powered handheld spotlight. He opened the back window of the truck and tried to get a good look at the guy behind us. He turned on the spotlight and shined it at him. The guy's front windows were heavily tinted, so we couldn't get a good look at his face. At this point, I had an idea. I swerved over to the left lane and told Jay to aim the spotlight at the man's side window. I hoped to see him through that. I briefly turned my head at the same time Jay illuminated him, and I'll never forget the look of this guy. He was at least 6.5 feet tall, hunched over the steering wheel like a hunchback. If I had to describe what a serial killer would look like, it was this guy. He had wild hair, bulging eyes, and the most disheveled face I've ever seen. The light and darkness could have made it look worse, but this was clearly a dangerous man. Once he saw that I wasn't alone and that we had just seen his face, he immediately exited off the highway at a truck stop rest area. To this day, Jay and I still debate whether I should have brake-checked the guy so we could have confronted him. Jay believes the guy must have been a serial killer and would just go find another victim eventually. I still stand by the decision not to force an accident. That could have gone wrong in too many ways and wasn't worth it. But I agree with Jay, this guy's intentions were definitely evil. Probably a robbery at minimum. Murder at worst. I'm just glad we never had to find out the hard way, and I hope no one else ever has to deal with him either. I lived in a pretty calm neighborhood packed with houses. Kids would play in the street all the time, and people could be seen grilling outside their homes. It was summer, so the neighborhood was especially lively. I knew my neighbors, but they didn't really know me. The only reason I even knew them was because I'd overhear their conversations through their open kitchen window. They never really interacted with me. Our backyard was fenced in, and so was theirs. The fences met at one point, and there were small cracks in the wood, not big enough to see clearly through, but enough to catch a glimpse if you got close. I spent a lot of time outside, practicing baseball in our batting cage or playing with my dog. I was usually out there for quite a while. I never really thought about whether the neighbors spent much time in their yard, until something strange happened. One day, I happened to be walking past the fence when I heard something odd. It sounded like whispering. I stopped, confused, and tried to listen in. It was so faint, I couldn't tell if I'd just imagined it or if it was maybe just the wind. After a moment, I shrugged it off and kept going. The next day, I was outside again, playing with my dog. I wasn't making much noise, so I heard it once more. This time, it sounded like someone calling out to me. "Hey." I paused, trying to figure out where it came from. It sounded close, like it was coming from the fence, but I couldn't see anyone there. I started to wonder if I really was just imagining things. I told myself that if it happened again, I'd get to the bottom of it. I noticed it only ever happened when I was outside during the day, so I decided to switch up my routine and start practicing at night. It was quiet and pitch black. The high fences made me feel safe, and I actually liked the peacefulness. One night, after finishing up my practice, I paused to gather my things. Everything was calm when I heard it again. But this time, they called my name directly. "Cassidy." I stopped what I was doing and looked at the fence. It felt like it came from right behind it. I leaned closer to the cracks in the wood and thought I could just about make out a shadow, a figure. I couldn't make it out clearly, but someone was definitely watching me. I couldn't imagine how they knew my name. I'd never told anyone in the neighborhood, and I didn't interact with them. My parents didn't talk to those neighbors either. I tried to stay calm and act like I didn't hear anything, but the voice came again. "Hey, Cassidy. Don't ignore me." I decided to respond. I walked closer to the fence and said, "Hello?" But nobody answered. I put my hand on the fence and tried to get a better look, when suddenly, there was a loud bang. Something slammed into the wood hard enough to crack it. Almost immediately, I heard vicious growling and barking. It sounded like a dog was on the other side, biting at the wood. The noise was frenzied, like whatever it was really wanted to break through. I panicked and ran inside to tell my parents. When I explained what had happened, they looked confused. "The neighbors don't have a dog," they said. I insisted I wasn't imagining it. They followed me outside to check, and sure enough, the fence was cracked. The wood had been pushed outward like something had slammed into it repeatedly. They went over to talk to the neighbors, who seemed surprised by the story. They said the same thing, no dog. The only person in the backyard at that time was their 7-year-old daughter. That didn't make much sense. How could a 7-year-old slam into a fence with enough force to crack the wood apart? The neighbors didn't seem to believe us, but their backyard had security cameras. We asked if they could check the footage. We watched and didn't see anyone, or anything, near the fence. Their daughter wasn't even outside at the time. Somehow, though, the audio was very clear. You could hear the whispering, the growling and barking, the banging against the fence. You could even see the moment when the wood cracked. Everyone stood there, unsure what to make of it. One of the parents suggested it might have been an elaborate prank pulled off by some kids using a sound machine or speaker. That just seemed silly to me. How would kids pull something like that off without being seen? And why? I'm not a big believer in supernatural stuff or anything like that, but that night, I experienced something that felt completely unexplainable. Anyone I've told this story to doesn't believe me. But I know what I heard. And I know what we saw, or didn't see, on that camera footage. My family moved away a year later. During that time, I avoided those neighbors completely. Occasionally, I thought I'd catch their daughter watching me through the fence, just standing there, staring at me. I never acknowledged her. And nothing like that ever happened again. When I was a kid, I was always scared of going down into our basement. I don't really know why. I guess a lot of kids are scared of that sort of stuff. It just always felt like there might be somebody hiding down there or something. Of course, I knew that couldn't be true, but anytime I had to go down there alone, I would always bolt back up the stairs as fast as I could. If someone, like my parents, was down there with me and the lights were on, I wouldn't be so scared. But if I ever had to go down alone, I hated it. One time, when I was about 11 years old, I was getting ready for school one morning. My older sister had already left for high school, and I was going to ride the bus to my middle school. Both of my parents had already left for work, so it was just me home alone for about 5 minutes. Normally, I would do everything last minute. I'd wake up as late as possible and scramble to get ready. That morning, I was looking for my shirt and realized it must still be downstairs in the laundry room. The laundry room was in the basement, and my mom had just done a wash the night before. That meant I had to go down into the basement by myself. I wasn't quite as scared at 11 as I used to be, but I was still nervous. I went down the stairs and made a beeline for the laundry room. I dug through the clothes until I found the shirt I was looking for. After I grabbed it, I turned and sprinted back toward the stairs. As I was running, I thought I saw someone out of the corner of my eye. The basement was mostly dark, but I could see what looked like a person standing in the room just down the hallway. I never looked directly at it. As I ran up the stairs, I told myself it was just my imagination. I actually managed to believe that. I got back upstairs, closed the basement door behind me, and finished getting ready for school. I went outside, locked the front door, and made it to the end of the driveway just as the bus pulled up. That day, after school, I rode the bus back home and got dropped off around 3 p.m. My sister was at volleyball practice until 5, and my parents were still at work. That meant I'd be home alone for a few hours, which was pretty normal. I went inside and headed straight to the living room to get a head start on my homework. I was sitting on the couch when, at some point, I thought I heard the basement door open. That was strange, nobody else was home. Instantly, my heart started racing. I froze and listened. I thought I could hear footsteps. The area near the basement wasn't in my line of sight from the couch, but hearing those sounds was enough to send me into a full panic. I bolted up the stairs and ran into my bedroom. I slammed the door shut behind me and hid underneath my bed. I was terrified. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, just my imagination. At one point, I grabbed my phone and called my parents. I told them what I'd heard. They told me that if I thought someone was in the house, I should call the police and that they'd be home soon. For some reason, I didn't call the police. I think I was scared I'd get in trouble if I really had just imagined the whole thing. I never actually saw anyone, not even that morning, so I wasn't completely sure what was happening. Maybe it really was just the creepy basement getting to me. About an hour later, my parents arrived home. I finally came out from under my bed and went downstairs to meet them. When I did, I noticed the basement door was wide open. I knew I had closed it earlier. Even worse, the back door to the house was also unlocked, something I was absolutely sure had been locked before I left for school. Someone had definitely been in our home. My dad checked all over the house but didn't find anything. There was no sign of a break-in, no damage, and nothing was missing. Nothing had been moved either. It was like whoever it was had come and gone without leaving a trace. To this day, we still don't know who, or what, was in the house that day, or why. And it still gives me the creeps every time I think about it. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.